Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. If you'd like to send a question or comment in, hit us up at dj@artistfirst.com. All past shows are archived. You can find it at artistfirst.com. And now here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man. And yes, it is Michael and Margaret Lyons, and we are amped up this evening. I don't know why. I came home. I was all amped up to do the show tonight. It's gonna be a great show. So this evening's topic is going to be kind of like one of them palindromes, except not. It's going to be a very interesting show, though. It's a concept that we were kind of talking about a couple of weeks ago, and we actually saw it as part of a show we were watching, and the words are interesting and maybe a little bit hard to pronounce. We put them up on the website, though, so if you guys have a chance to go check out the website, the concept is Wabi Sabi, which is not something that you put on your sushi. Although it could be. It could be. Wabi Sabi is, I guess it really what comes down to is it's a sort of a philosophy or way of living, and basically the best way to talk about it would be perfection as found in imperfection. And we thought it was very interesting from the point of view of all things, and this sort of spun into a different topic we were thinking about talking about. All things within themselves are, rather, within themselves envelop their own mortality, their own imperfection, their own way of, their own cycle of both birth and life, and then ultimately death. And Wabi Sabi is kind of a very compact way of saying finding the beauty in the fact that things are continuously being very imperceptibly destroyed. Yes, change.
Yeah, change. It's an appreciation for change. It literally becomes an exercise in finding the beauty in the changes around you.
Right.
Because
up there for my wrinkles, baby.
Yes. We grow old together and watch each other fall apart. I believe that was Robin Williams. But
the wrinkled apples are sweeter.
Actually, they go to alcohol. That's what they do.
That's what they do. And later on, we will be going to alcohol, but not right now. Wabi Sabi, baby.
Okay.
It'd be actually a great mixed drink. We're having a Wabi Sabi tonight. Anyway, so.
Oh, Lordy.
But in fact, to be serious for a second, Wabi Sabi is. It can actually, basically thinking about it and talking about it a little bit, it can actually change the way you view objects in your life and you view your own life. It has its roots in Buddhist philosophy, and it kind of is an outgrowth of, and we can talk a little bit about that, about the three basic tenets of Buddhism.
Right. Well, again, it goes back to beauty that's found in the imperfect, the impermanent, and the incomplete.
Which is why you love me.
That's right. You. Yes, dear.
I am impermanent, and incomplete.
And incomplete. Yes, indeed. Are we going to go back to this, or are we just going to?
We're just having too much fun. Go right ahead.
I know. This is just what happens. And that is the imperfection and the beauty of it.
Wow, that was what a great segue. Wow. Check that out. Go.
All right. It basically is derived from, the Buddhist teachings of the marks of existence, and that's specifically the impermanence of everything. Suffering, which life has. This life has suffering.
Well, that was the first enlightenment, was all life is suffering. But yeah.
Okay, but we're discussing Wabi Sabi as opposed to what are the Buddhist tenets directly.
Yes.
And emptiness or absence of self-nature.
Mm.
And that is been a discussion that we've been having a few times about it not being about you.
It's not all about you, and that has been echoing along this year. It could be, we could call this the year of it's not about you.
All right. Well, in the Japanese, it's called ku, K-U. And the emptiness or absence of self-nature. Now, emptiness, people think of as something negative.
Almost like equating it with loneliness.
Right. But the emptiness has to do with allowing space for things to happen. It is understanding that you cannot erect the boundaries, because the minute you erect the boundaries, specifically of self and personality, you cannot, you draw your world into a much smaller concept.
It's like the concept of control, which is the other thing we were talking about not too long ago, is that when you try to control everything, when you try to direct everything, when you try to be present in everything, rather than the emptiness, which is allowing, receiving, opening yourself to inspiration, opening yourself to a new solution, and if you're continually manipulating, continually in the I-centered, ego-centered, is where you end up with, you're not in the emptiness.
Right. And it's interesting because the emptiness, that concept of openness, emptiness, again, not negative emptiness, just space that can be filled with the things that are around you. That is something that is appreciated or looked for in the Japanese aesthetic. You are looking for that selflessness and seeing a much broader picture. They work to do that, to bring a consciousness up to that point, which is why you have, remember when they had the earthquake and the nuclear...
Sure.
And then these people just said, okay, we will work through this to contain this, even though we ourselves are exposed to the radiation. But that's fine, because that's part of that aesthetic. Fine for them. They've accepted that. Okay, I'm not saying, it's not a judgment call. But
and selflessness, and we talked about this not too long ago, a couple 3 shows ago, where you in essence find your own life less than what you might lay down for another. Giving your own life to save another's life. It's the same sort of thing. It's when we talked about it's not all about you. It's also when you put the other ahead of who you are or who you think you are.
It's more than that. It's identifying identifying yourself within the other and the other within you. There is no difference. So that is that openness of space for the concept of yes,
of emptiness.
Absence of self-nature. That is more towards the core of what it means. It's not, again, emptiness, people think of being alone. And, there's nothing to fill. How can you have emptiness? It's like, no, there's more than that.
And it's the same fear of emptiness that keeps people in the I, because if I'm not talking about I, it's scary. Why, it's like I don't exist if I'm talking about me.
Exactly. It's basically when you begin to erect the walls of, okay, this is who I am. I'm defining me. I do this, I do that. When you make that definition, and then the world comes in and changes, whatever the environment is around you, which is also part of the Wabi Sabi, change, you become threatened.
Yeah.
As opposed to looking at it and understanding that change happens. This is one of the realities of this existence. Change happens.
And right along that same concept, the I wants surety and permanence and to be continually at the center of everything. And that is the antithesis of Wabi Sabi or of Ku, and because what you're really talking about is that impermanence, imperfection, if the ephemeral nature of life is a threat to the I, because the I wants to exist forever, and the I never wants to say, well, there isn't an I. Oh my God, the whole world must end because I'm not here.
You know? Pretty much. But that answers why you see so much vehemence, so much violence, because when a person feels like their very existence is being threatened, it's not just their life, it's their identity. And that hits at a soul level, where your soul feels like it's going to go into oblivion. It doesn't exist. That's when there's that fight that comes up and says, no, belligerent, I do exist, and I'm going to fight this, and you're supposed to do it this way because I do exist, and you can have no right to say I don't. It's like, well, no one was saying you don't exist. But what happened was life came in and pulled at one of those walls that you erected that you have defined as yourself. And fear is usually the first thing that rises because you feel like you are going to be annihilated by something on the outside. It's like, no. The identification of you are more, much, much more than the personality and the likes and dislikes that you have established your world in, and to embrace that. This is a foundational philosophical viewpoint that Wabi Sabi stands for. You are understanding that everything is imperfect. And everything changes, and nothing is truly complete. So finding the beauty in the change, because the problem that we have right now is that there's a lot of images in the media that we deal with of what the perfect person is supposed to look like, sound like, dress like, own. You know, and it's like, no, that's static. It's so static. I don't think people realize how static that is.
Well, I think it even rejoices in the static. It wants to put this physical beauty at a static point, and if you ever deviate off of this, it's wrong. It's bad. It wants to put life, not as a process of birth to death, but as this eternal 30-something, that's always doing all the wonderful things and has all the wonderful parties and has all the greatest cars and never ages and never this really incredibly incorrect version of the world is what people are trying there and striving for, that perfection, and all those things are antithetical to happiness. Happiness is found in the acceptance of life is change. Happiness is found in the acceptance of you are not going to be here forever, so live for the moment. This idea of this eternal static 30-something is unattainable and brings nothing but unhappiness, because you just can't be there. Love those fat rolls, people. Love those wrinkles, because they're part of you. Sometimes you get fat enough that you don't have wrinkles anymore because you just kind of expand them out. It's awesome. But no, it's true. If you hold up this incredible standard, which cannot be attained,
Impossible.
Static, impossible goal.
Impossible goal. And to realize that you will never be able to reach that impossible goal, because if reaching that goal was the only way you were going to be happy, then you have basically sentenced yourself.
Condemned yourself, yes.
Yeah, to a life of misery. It's like you don't need to choose that. You really don't need to choose misery as the foundation of your life. And it's funny because you hear about how all these self-imposed rules have got to happen. You can't be part of our group unless you think a certain way, you say certain things, you dress a certain way. It's like, that is not what existence actually is.
Right, and it's funny because going back to the earlier, the walls that you put up there and the I walls that you put up, and I am this and I am not that, and anything that tries to be like me has to be within my walls. And then when you start to pull them down, when life actually starts to crack them apart, when you see that first wrinkle or that first gray hair or that first saggy butt or whatever it is, it wrecks that world of yours, and instantly it's an existential fear of, I'm not going to be the I anymore. I'm something else. All of a sudden, what am I? And Wabi Sabi, or the acceptance of the ephemeral nature of life, and the beauty of that, the beauty of aging, the beauty of growing up and growing into maturity, and then growing older, and then finally, just wandering off into a puddle somewhere, is part of what is the beauty of the cycle of physical existence. And then if you want to hold to something eternal, there's plenty of eternal. The openness, the emptiness is also how you connect up to the eternal.
It basically focuses your consciousness on the reality. And what we're seeing is that focusing on your appearance and it having to be a certain way really just puts you in a cage.
It's built by others.
You have given over the freedom to choose for yourself in that moment. And all you're thinking about is what you are not, as opposed to what you are. What are you in this moment? That, if you look at that philosophy of Wabi Sabi, you're understanding that you're accepting who you are in that moment in order to find the beauty that exists in the moment. If you do not accept who you are in that moment, then all you're going to be doing is lamenting the fact that I don't have this, or I can't do that, or something, I'm unhappy. But so there's no beauty involved.
And just to take it in a different direction, if you want to see true beauty and true people who are accepting the fact that life is short, you go to those cancer wards and go to those pediatric wards and see those kids who are living their lives without any definition other than their own internal, because nothing from the external says that they have that they are meeting any of those rules. They're no longer young and beautiful and free, and no, but they are. All those things are still there. They're still in the acceptance of where they are right now, and that brokenness and the ephemeral nature of their lives, and the fact that they know that their lives could end at any moment, brings out incredible beauty, incredible depth, true humanness is right there, because these kids and these people, all of us really, when we accept the fact that we are not going to be here very long, the true nature of what it is to be alive comes out, and the most profound thoughts and the most profound growth happens right there, in the impermanence, in the fact that we are ephemeral, and that we accept that so totally and forget about self. They aren't saying, oh God, I'm going to die and worry, worry, worry. No, it's live for today because tomorrow is not promised.
Exactly. You begin to truly appreciate life, what life is. And if nothing is promised, you understand that, and you appreciate that you have this moment right now, and you're sharing it with someone.
And that's all that matters, that right there.
Yes, that contact point. In that moment, you weave a memory within the thread of both your lives into something much greater tapestry. Was that the three fates that weave the lives of men, the threads of men? But it's a wonderful analogy because you begin to see that it really is not about you, but you are core to the thread and the pattern that's being woven around you.
Right, and what's the actual eternal is the pattern.
Right.
And what's the actual eternal is the memory, is the fact that today was a good day, that we did something fun today. We sat down and we dug a hole in the sand and then we filled it up again. It was a great day. It has nothing to do with I. It's nothing to do with whether we were fat or thin or skinny or bald or we were going to die tomorrow. Today was a good day.
And you take it day by day.
Moment by moment.
As your life unfolds in front of you, what does the day bring? Even though the children on that ward were under that terrible sentence of cancer of some form or other, they were so joyful to wake up in the morning to see what the day would bring. And it was wondrous because you're just like, okay, you're there as a mother. You're there not only with your child, but usually whoever your roommate happened to be.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something I can do to help you? Is there, what can you? And it was just, everyone would wake up and look at each other like, hey, we're here. Good morning.
And we're all there right now. Folks, we are all under a sentence of ultimate dissolution. We all should wake up in the morning happy to be here today because the illusion of we're always going to be 30-something and we're always going to have the wonderfulness that's wonderful is the illusion. If you turn that around and use these silly term, it sounds silly, but it's true, the Wabi and the Sabi, we'll talk about it a little bit in the next half hour. But the whole idea here is that you carpe diem, you seize the day, you realize that it might rain, it might snow, you might stub your toe, but you're going to have a day. You've got this day, this moment, the relationship that the person you're talking with on the radio, you've got these people right at this moment, and you've got to just enjoy that.
To embrace it, to appreciate it, to love it. Just to love it, even though it may bring pain to you, still.
Right. And even though it may never come again, and even though you may realize that, you're not as sharp as you once were, or as beautiful as you once were, or as anything as you once were, none of that matters.
No, who you are in that moment. And honestly, it's awful when the moms and I would talk when the kids were asleep. And I remember we were talking about one mom who had just lost her child. And we were trying to console her the best we could. But we all looked at each other and all agreed what you wouldn't give for another day, for another moment. And all you could do is hold each other in that moment. And know that this is not the end. We're not done yet. We are not done yet.
Exactly. And that feeling is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And the Madison Avenue 30-something, always going to be young and pretty and thin and rich, is the lie. The lie that.
But it's also part of one of the precepts of Wabi Sabi, which is acceptance of the impermanence.
Yes. And suffering. And the joy of accepting impermanence and the inevitability of suffering, but not worrying about it.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that the moms and I, with each other, were suffering together because every child on that ward was yours. Every child on that ward is yours. So when one of the children leaves, we all mourn. And we mourn specifically for the ones left behind.
Yeah. And that's the truth. That's the truth of it.
That's what life is down here. It's still not the end. Although we have a break coming up.
It is the end of this half hour, but coming out in the next half hour when we come back from the studio, a little studio break, we're going to talk a little bit about maybe a little bit more about what Wabi Sabi is, and from the point of view of a little bit of the entomology and going back in history a bit. We'll talk to you on the other side.
Hi, my name is Christina Garlick, and my new book, Nevada Rain, is now available. It's a sci-fi fantasy story for ages 14 and up. I hope you check it out, and of course enjoy. Also, you're listening to the ArtistFirst radio network that has a station for everyone.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir. There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Get ready, Jade. I've got a surprise adventure you're going to love.
Really?
We're going to swim with Sally the tiger cub. Even get a photo with her that you can share with all your friends.
I don't want to go, Mom.
You feel all right, Jade? I thought you'd love this.
I'm okay, but I feel terrible for those poor tiger cubs. Did you know that they're stolen from their mothers the day they're born?
What?
Yeah. How'd you feel if someone kidnapped me at birth?
Well...
And when the cubs do normal things like nip and paw, they're punished so they'll sit still for photos. And how would you feel if you were a baby and they pushed you into a deep pool to swim for your life?
I never thought about it that way.
And when they get too big to pet, they end up being imprisoned in tiny cages.
Where'd you learn all that?
From StopBigCatAbuse.com.
Studies show that children who learn compassion for animals show more compassion for humans. So teach your children well. Learn more at StopBigCatAbuse.com.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
We're listening to The Soul of the Everyman on ArtistFirst Radio. Have a question or comment? Send it to us at dj@artistfirst.com. You can use the link provided at the top of the ArtistFirst homepage, and we'll read your comment on air. Now back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Steve-Man. And yes, welcome back to the second half of The Soul of the Everyman show. And tonight we've been talking about really a very interesting concept, which is kind of summed up in two words, Wabi Sabi. And if you didn't listen to the first half hour, we won't go into it too much, but it's a philosophy, it's a way of living, and maybe we should just talk a little bit about the etymology. The words themselves are interesting because they come from Japanese, of course, and back in the 14th or 15th century. What was it, Ma?
14th century. Yeah, and basically it doesn't really translate really well into English. But originally, Wabi referred to living in nature, the solitude of living in nature and remote from society. And Sabi had meant chill or lean. And Wabi now, because that was 14th century, and then it began to evolve, and it connotes simplicity, freshness, quietness, and pretty much applied to natural and man-made objects. Or if you're looking at a style, it's supposed to be understated elegance. It refers to the unusual things that happen when something is being manufactured or made that gives something, whatever the object is, a kind of uniqueness.
And probably would that concept would probably go really well with the current. There's a lot of movement now to go back to more simple ways of living, more simplicity in your food, the whole organic movement and all that, and then the whole idea of when you handcraft things and so many things are just kind of spit out of a machine or they seem very very non-human made. They seem very machine made. Of course, at the origin, there's a designer behind every piece that's ever made anywhere. But then when you see something that's more handcrafted or more individually, uniquely put together, and there's always that little. If you look at any piece of pottery, you're going to find a thumbprint,
right,
or slightly bent this way, or in the glaze there's an imperfection,
right,
or when it was being fired it just didn't. So these things are what you're loving. It's the wabi in your sabi, It's the it is the fact that you can tell that this thing is it was a concept which maybe was in its conception was very perfect. Perfect. I want to make this perfect looking thing, but in the fact of actually trying to do it and dealing with the fact that reality is not controllable, that there's always a bit of randomness, a bit of capriciousness in the materials, in what you're doing to make them, to fire the clay, for argument's sake. Mm-hmm. And that reflects upon us, upon the human nature. We are imperfect vessels. We aren't able to be said to be, a perfect construction. We look at a baby and they say, oh, they're so beautiful, they're so perfect. But we grow up. We become older and more careworn and more experienced. And these are the things you love in a person, the person's mutability, the person's changeability, the object's mutability, its changeability.
Right. It is I believe Sabi is supposed to be the beauty or serenity that comes with age.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because I think the phrase that they use now for Wabi Sabi is flawed beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Finding the flawed beauty in something, an object. And
it's funny, every face, if you look at it, and people have done this study. When you look at someone's face, it looks very regular in general. But if you divide that face in half and you mirror it using a piece of software or just put a mirror up, the people find that a mirrored face, a truly perfectly symmetrical face, is much less beautiful than one which is slightly imperfect. Our concepts of beauty at a below awareness level incorporate this idea of asymmetry, that incorporate the idea of imperfection. The most beautiful painting in the world, or many of them, will be imperfect in some way. The proportion is off. Oh, the Mona Lisa, the imperfections of the Mona Lisa are what make it the most famous and arguably one of the most beautiful paintings ever made, because of the fact that she isn't this stunningly perfect beauty, but her beauty is a very human beauty.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Is appreciating the uniqueness of the form that is being presented to you in whatever fashion it may be. The aging process and how it changes things. Like an example I remember they gave was an autumn leaf.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciating the colors that are coming through, and then as it dries out, it changes, finding that beauty, the blooming of a flower, and then when it goes to seed. Just it is understanding that impermanence is part of our human experience, and we are blessed to be able to appreciate that. That is considered the highest form of human being, thinking, consciousness, to appreciate the beauty of impermanence. No animal can do that.
Right, or they don't have the awareness of it necessarily. Some of the other things that you'll find if you look up Wabi Sabi is the incidence of damage, or the incidence of just capricious chance that something will break, or something will, over the time that you use it, it will show wear. It will start to show. It starts out as this sort of pristine thing, and then over time it gets a little tattered, or it gets a little worn, or you can see fingerprints on it, or whatever. These types of marks of experience on an object become, in this philosophy, part of its beauty. It incorporates the fact that it is no longer new. And if you turn it around and look at yourself in the mirror, you have to incorporate the fact that you are no longer new. You are somewhat old. and the person that you were, and it's good to look, let's say, at photographs. You look back at yourself and say, there I am at age 2, there I am at age 8, there I am at age 18, there I am. But it's me, it's my existence through this time period. But I can see that I had great hair, and now, I have great skin on the top of my head. I had, I was thinner, I was fatter, I was stronger, I was bolder, I was whatever it was. Those are the things of the past, and you have to look at yourself in the present and realize that in the future you will be yet again different. You will be not necessarily always worse, but just different. You'll have a different experience. You'll have learned something. You'll have forgotten things, maybe more things than you've learned. But the whole idea is that the marks of the change are part of your beauty, are part of who makes you who you are.
I remember I think it was a show of a photographer, and what they had done is there were these 4 sisters. and in a family, and they had pictures of them as small children, and it was like a picture every year of their life. And 4 of them together, and you saw how they all changed until they were, I think it was their 60s or 70s. And it was remarkable, just remarkable, because each picture not only showed their physical changes, but the changes that were going on in their relationship one to the other. And that is a wonderful example of what Wabi Sabi is.
Exactly.
It was true, and the love, you saw that love in their eyes mature as their awareness matured to something truly beautiful. Truly beautiful. And it had nothing to do with what they were wearing or what colors were matching or anything like that. It had to do with the appreciation of the faces, their commonality, because they're sisters. Their differences as well. And then different, for the most part, they tried to get them in the same kind of order, but, you know, as pictures go, different positions. But you could see the relationship one to the other.
And the interesting thing is, as an observer, and not even knowing them, you can find that common humanness between their changes and yours, because they're just an exemplar of how all of us change. And in understanding that all throughout their lives, from the very beginning to the very to where they were now, their relationships changed, their appearance and how they how their their faces and their bodies changed, but yet all throughout you could have that idea of there's a loving unit here. There's something permanent in the impermanence that adjusts and changes, lives and understands that the beauty that was in 4-year-olds or whatever it was to start with is still there in 64-year-olds. But it's different. It's still the beauty. There's beauty there. There's love there. But it's matured. It's a living, breathing thing. It's not a static thing like a picture is. If you said, "I never want to change from my 4-year-old self, ever," or 14 or 30, pick your point, you might as well just be a static picture. You might as well die, because if you say, "I will not move, I will not change, I will not age, I will not," you might as well stop existing. You're no longer part of really the world anymore. If you try to attain that goal.
And it's understanding that beauty is eternal. That concept, that appreciation is eternal. It's just the form changes, and you need to find it in each different form, in each different moment. It's an excellent exercise in training the mind to come to a point where you realize it's more than you. It is the love relationship. Basically, you're seeing it blossom in these women and the different expressions of love on their faces. Just amazing. It's just, when you think of it, isn't that what we're doing down here? Is learning what different forms of love actually are. Taking steps towards that unconditional love. Because you, as a being, your life and your relationships change. So at any given moment, you learn more and more about what it means to love.
Exactly. And part of it is realizing that you can't love the static. You can't love a thing that is never going to change. Or rather, if you try to do that and you say, well, my love is tied to this thing as it is in this instant, then you're either going to have to change your love or the thing is never going to have to change, because it's not going to remain the same. If you say, I love this thing, but then it's broken and I hate it, I can't love it anymore. Or I love this thing, but now it's older, now the paint is chipped, now it's got a dent, now I have to throw it away. I can no longer have a relationship thing. It's not perfect anymore. It's not the thing I fell in love with. Let's bring it to people.
Yeah, because you can't really love a thing.
Well, I was trying to, but if I bring it to people,
that's a definition, and we're talking about definitions at that point. So we'd have to use a different word.
Then let's just say that.
Okay, let's go back to the Wabi Sabi. It is the appreciation of the beauty of the thing. And I can only appreciate its beauty if it's stagnant. It's got to be this way.
Exactly. But in relationships, if we go back to love, if you say the person that I fell in love with on our wedding day or on their wedding day, if you say, well, if you change, or if our physical or if anything about us changes, I can't love you anymore, because that's what I fell in love with, just this. And to the extent that you deviate off of this, you gain a pound, you lose a pound, you lose a hair, you gain a hair, whatever it is, oh, I can't love you anymore. I fell in love with this, this slice of a person, which is nothing more than a chimera. It's a photograph. It has nothing to do with the actual person. It's an illusion. And illusory love is what a lot of people get stuck on. They get stuck on, I fall in love with the concept or the illusion, and the reality breaks their relationship, and then they fall out of relationship very quickly.
But it's going back to that concept of mirrors. You only basically engage with someone who's going to mirror something to you. Okay?
Yes.
And that idea that you've already decided that this is the only way I want my mirror to look.
Like me. It has to mirror me, mirror me, mirror me, mirror me.
But these are the criteria that must be met for my mirror for me to be happy about seeing my reflection. Okay?
Exactly.
As opposed to using that mirror concept to appreciate the fact that change is inevitable. And you will be anticipating a different form in the mirror, different face in the mirror, different change in the mirror. Mm-hmm. Not locking it down to a snapshot moment. Snapshot moments basically limit your world so small, two-dimensional, that you can only be happy in those two dimensions. It's just that you as a being, you are much more than two dimensions. But understanding that your mind is sitting there going, hey, I've decided this is where I've got to be.
Right.
It's like, no, you're more than that. So much more than that. Why are you choosing that? You don't have to choose. You can choose something else. It's lovely.
And to bring it back to where we started with all this, is embracing that concept that finding the beauty in impermanence is a healthy and much more correct way of looking at life, because there is nothing in this world or in this physical world that is not impermanent.
Right. It's real. This is reality. Things change.
Right.
Everything changes. And what's the phrase? You're born in this world, and you will everything. Nothing gets out of here alive.
Right. No one gets off the planet alive, which is one of our themes on the Soul of the Everyman. and gosh darn it, look at that. But it's true. No one gets off the planet alive, but in fact, no one gets off the planet unscathed would be a better way of putting it, because even the shortest life is one in which change occurs, and the longest lives are the ones in which the most change occurs. So the eternal wheel forever rotates, and you are on it. You move with it, and you get changed by it. Look at the shoreline. The sea looks like the most permanent thing in the world, yet every moment it is changing. Every grain of sand on that beach is moving all the time. The beach looks the same, but then there's a storm, and then something happens, and it changes, and yet it restores. It goes back and forth. That impermanence of the shoreline and the sea is one of the reasons why people find it so heartbreakingly beautiful, because it's so ephemeral. You can look at it for 5 minutes and see something new, and then you turn around and you see something new again.
Always new. It's always new, and it's always part of a process.
Mm-hmm.
And it is appreciating its many faces at any given moment.
Exactly. And, we have to all learn to wear our impermanence proudly, and wear our impermanence as a badge of living, of life, and appreciate the impermanence of others. You love whom you are with right now, without fear, but with the realization that the love you have with them right now is precious, because it's going to change. You're going to change. They're going to change. New things are going to happen to you, good and bad. And at the moment when everything is just going along, love that moment. Love that person. Love that person who's across the room talking with you on the radio. You are the Wabi in my Sabi, baby.
Oh, my. Okay.
But it's true, and I hope I am too to you. I hope I'm the Sabi in your Wabi.
Yes, yes. Yes, you are.
Well, all right, baby. But in fact, what's the wonderful thing? Just very recently, we had an example in the news of a couple that had it was a former president who had, his wife just died, and they had been together for 73 years, and yet there are many others. I mean, we know a couple of people who have had 50th anniversaries, 60th anniversaries, and whenever you hear about that, you say, "Wow, look at these two people. They've lived a whole life together. They've changed. They've aged. They're all falling apart, but they are still together as a couple, and so it's the permanence in impermanence, the relationship that lasts through much trial and much change. It always warms your heart. You go, oh, wow, 73 years married, 50 years married, because it's not easy. There's what the appreciation of part of Wabi Sabi is, appreciating how hard it is to continue in the face of life, which is change.
True. It's understanding that there is suffering in this life.
Right. And that in essence, combating it has a value too. In essence, that this is living in the face of change and suffering has value. It adds beauty.
Yeah. It's choosing to live in the face of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Is incredibly courageous and incredibly beautiful, because that is the human spirit made known in that given moment. And people, I know, the culture is always trying to tell people you got to find out who you are and be who you want to be, et cetera. But when you face that kind of experience, you're facing heart-rending pain or suffering in front of you, and you still choose to live.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. It is heart-rendingly beautiful to watch and to be that person. You're not just being a spectator. The echo is that I'm there. You're me. Where you are right now is where I will be or where I have been. And the beauty that is coming out in you, I can appreciate it because and internalize it because that's the same sort of thing that'll come out if hopefully if you can persevere and work your way through your own trials.
They choose life in that moment. And that is the beauty of it all. Choose life even though you're surrounded by all this darkness.
Mm.
And that in and of itself, that is what it means to carry your cross.
Yes, it does.
You acknowledge that there is suffering all around you. Still, you choose to be courageous. No one said it was going to be easy.
No, and there's a beauty in the courage, a very true, very, very crystalline beauty in the courage that you see when any of us or all of us choose to persevere. And there's beauty in the good times. There's beauty in love. There's beauty in easy and rest and all those things too. But it's your true metal comes out. There's a true beauty in having the scars of overcoming. The signs of both imperfection and injury and healing. A scar is a badge of honor.
Yes. Yes. That is Wabi Sabi.
That is Wabi Sabi. That is scary wary, huh? And I think we've reached the end of another scary episode of The Soul of the Everyman.
Have we indeed?
We have indeed. So we'll have to just say Wabi your Sabi and enjoy your life. And this has been Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.
Indeed.